the third week here of the MVFC First and Goal series, and this week we are going behind the mic with WDAY Sports Director Dom Izzo. Dom, welcome to the show.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm doing very well. It's early in the college football season. It seems like it's already late for us since NDSU started a week before everybody. It feels like we're already in mid-season, and yet it's just week 3. But that's kind of the deal that we've had. And we've been going since to January the last 5 years. So it's kind of buckle up and go once July hits. It's football season up here.
Yeah, you're very much like the Green Bay Packers of the college football world, so to say, where it's a year-round deal.
There's no doubt about that. Bison football doesn't really end when the season ends because it goes to recruiting season, then spring football. There may be a little bit of a lull in April and May and June, and then after that, it's like, all right, here we go. Once the season gets going, but this year there really wasn't any with Carson Wentz, obviously in the draft. That was a whole other deal this past year.
Yeah, well, fittingly, you just celebrated your 10-year anniversary at WDAY.
Good evening, everybody. The Bison men's basketball team faced some adversity.
So, tell me, first of all, what that means to you, and then, talk a little bit about the different hats you wear, in the media scene there in Fargo, because you have your hands in so many different things.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that I've been in Fargo for 10 years. I remember when I got here from New York, I had signed a contract for 3 years. Like, my goodness, that seems like forever. And the sports director at that time, he left, I want to say in early 2010, and the news director approached me and asked me if I would be interested. And I thought, well, if a chance to be sports director and I'm 30 years old, it's kind of right what my goals. So I don't have to move. I know the people that I'm covering, and I thought this is a great opportunity. And it's turned out that I've had a chance to cover things I never would have imagined. Obviously, North Dakota State's football success has been well documented, and we've been at the forefront of that. To what Carson Wentz experienced, obviously, this past year. I've become the lead voice for the North Dakota High School championships. We televise for football, basketball, and hockey, and I do that. So that's been awesome because I love to do play-by-play. It's been something else, and it's really, really been a lot of fun. In terms of all the different stuff, it's not just on, and you know this, Kelly, it's not just in front of the camera anymore. I was fortunate, the high school I went with, we had a fully fledged television station where the students got, their hands dirty right away, which was great. So I learned how to shoot. I learned how to edit. And I made sure I knew all that just because, I get very jealous of the guys and gals now that get jobs right out of school on air right out of school. Because I was off camera. I was a news photographer at a station in Syracuse, New York, for about a year and a half, and that was great because I was in the TV business. That's what I wanted to do, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. It kept me connected, and I ended up taking a small sports gig at a small cable station that they didn't have their own station cars. I was driving my own car.
Oh wow!
No insurance, all that kind of good stuff. But I was on TV for basically 7 days a week. So I was the sports department, and I was there for about a year and a half, and then I came to Fargo, and like I said, in 2006. But yeah, here it's, I obviously anchor the sports every night at 6 and 10. I used to have a nightly radio show. I don't have that anymore, which was really entertaining. I loved doing that because it just gave you more of the ability to A, give opinion, and B, able to connect with different people that you just couldn't do on a 3-minute sportscast or 4-minute sportscast. I do have a weekly one with Jeff Kolpak that is pretty heavy on college football that we do every Saturday. I have a blog as well that is pretty Bison related. So I got my hands at a lot of things, and it's good that way. It keeps me good at writing, and B, I think it gets me pretty good on my ad-lib skills because I don't want to become one of those TV anchor robots that are out there, as you probably know. I honestly think I sent a tape to every state in the continental 48, I'm pretty sure. And I had never been west of Ohio before WDAY called me. So that was kind of a shock knowing that North Dakota didn't have any pro teams. And it didn't take long after I got here to find out the passion that people have for North Dakota State football and the University of North Dakota hockey. It's very similar for what I grew up to, how much people love the Yankees, how much people love the Rangers or the Bills back home. It's crazy. It's very similar like that here in North Dakota.
Well, so speaking of where you grew up, you're from Glen Falls, New York. I'm told you're a huge Mets fan. How are sports, a backdrop for your childhood? And when did you decide that you wanted to be a sportscaster?
My dad is a massive sports fan. I guess that's kind of like whatever, maybe the cliche story, but I grew up watching, grew up playing. I knew I was never any good at it. I enjoyed playing, but I was never any good at either baseball or basketball. Those are the two that I played growing up. And people tell the story all the time now. I'm not sure how often it's true, but I literally, on my old Nintendo or Super Nintendo, I would mute the television, and I would, as I'm playing the game, I'm calling it. That's when I knew this is what I wanted to do. And I was, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old probably. And the best thing, as my dad used to be out in the backyard working or whatever, and he'd bring a walkie-talkie out, and I would have the other end of the walkie-talkie, and I'd be describing the play if it was a baseball postseason game or whatever, and just give him the play-by-play, something like that. I used to do that with him, which was fantastic, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I thought it was something I was really good at. If it didn't work out, I really didn't have a backup plan. But it's something that I love, and I don't know anything else. This is what I've always wanted to do. I'm really fortunate like that because I meet people, or I visit with college students who they're not really sure what they want to do, and I can't remember a time when I did not know what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You worked also in Syracuse, New York.
Yep.
There's obviously not a huge difference in weather adjustment, but what was that initial transition like to North Dakota when you moved 10 years ago?
The wind was the biggest thing, because back home we get a ton of snow. My hometown is Oswego, New York, and we are right on Lake Ontario, so we get the lake effect snow, and it comes in waves. Like the Weather Channel could set up shop out there because how often they've come, because we get like 17 inches in one day. It's crazy. Obviously, it's not as snowy here, but the wind and the cold is way worse than back home. I can remember when I pulled up to my first apartment, they had these outlets outside by each parking space, and I asked, "What are these for?" I'm like, "Oh, you'll." Then the apartment manager goes, "You'll know in the winter." And it was for block heaters to plug your car into, so the car would start in January and February, and I ended up needing them, obviously. So it was definitely a change. That first month, and it's funny, you're talking to me after my 10 years ago. I can vividly remember the first month here, thinking, my goodness, what did I get myself into? I hope they don't send my butt back to New York, just trying not to butcher town names, trying to and I started in September, which is, it's the worst time ever, because high school football's going on, college football's going on, and you get so much. It's just, I was swimming until probably, I would say, May, and that's when things finally I start to settle down, like, okay, I have a little bit of grasp what's going on here.
Yeah. 2 weeks now, I guess we're in the third week of college football season, but 2 overtime wins for the Bison. How would you say this year's team differs from the teams, the championship teams of the last couple of years?
That's a good question. I think we're still trying to figure out what this team is going to be. There's a lot of pieces back, obviously, from last year's team. You look great at Easton Stick, who went 8-0 last year when Carson Wentz got hurt, and he is certainly been very, very impressive to start the season. Their defense, we knew the secondary was going to be really green, and if there's one area you can look at, especially after the Eastern Washington game, to go, whoa, what's happening there? But Eastern's a different team, that they throw it up all over the field. They've done it to everybody for the last 5 to 6 years. I think we're going to find out a little bit this coming Saturday at Iowa. Obviously, this is a way different challenge than NDSU has faced in any of their FBS games, and anybody that watches this knows, obviously, the success the Bison have had against the upper division, winning the last 5. But they haven't faced anybody at the level of what Iowa is. Kansas State was good.
Yeah.
This Iowa team, though, played in the Rose Bowl last year. And I know it didn't go well for them on New Year's Day last year, but they have went out and Chris Kleiman told us yesterday, the head coach, that they've come out with purpose this first 2 games of the season. They're playing with a pretty hard edge, and you can see that the first 2 games they've had this season.
Yeah, I'm sure this Saturday should be super exciting. Yeah. As far as dynasties go, how would you rank NDSU, and what does it compare to in the sports world?
That's a great question. I think it's not comparable in college football because no one's done it. This is the first time that's ever happened in college football, so that they're unprecedented there. I think you can look at maybe the Yankees of the late 40s, early 50s. I think they won 5 in a row. The Canadiens in hockey, I think they did something similar in the 70s. The Celtics, when they were unbelievable in the 50s and 60s. I know these are maybe preposterous statements and professional teams, but no one else has done this. I mean, Alabama at the top, I call them the big boy division. I mean, they've won, 3 of 5, something crazy like that, and that's unbelievable what they've done. And NDSU has taken on all challengers, and there have been some teams. Illinois State a couple years ago was a tremendous team, and by all rights, maybe deserved to win that game. And if Carson Wentz isn't on the field, Illinois State wins the national championship that year. And they've had other games where the ball has just bounced their way. It's unbelievable. Over 5 years in a row, every bounce has gone their way, or any sort of – and they've created their own breaks too. I don't want to just say they're lucky because they have been dominant. They have been good. They've forced the mistakes to happen or forced the opportunities they've created. It's just – I've run out of words to describe it over the last 5 years. And it even happened on Saturday. They found a way to win again. In a shootout game, which they've never really kind of played before.
Yeah. College football can be so cyclical. Do you see any scenario? I mean, NDSU has just been so dominant. Do you see any scenario where that changes? You cover this team on an almost daily basis.
I don't know if we'll ever see like a 3-8 season again, like they were in 2009, which is remarkable to think that they only won 3 games in a football season. But they changed their recruiting philosophy during that season and brought in a different type of player, and they have really now embraced, and this is the hip word of the day, this culture of what Bison football really is. Do I see them winning it every year? No. Could I see a 4-loss season, a 7-4, which people might be jumping off buildings here in Fargo, whatever would happen? Yeah, I could see that happen. It might be this year. Who knows? I mean, the Valley is loaded.
Yeah,
You've seen already what Illinois State won at Northwestern already. That's got people's attention. What South Dakota State did at TCU, that's got people's attention. And obviously, Northern Iowa always has people's attention in this part of the world because that's NDSU's biggest rival. It's not going to be this way every single year. And I think finally NDSU fans are starting to realize that. When they lost 2 games last year, Kelly, people were like, oh my, and then Carson Wentz got hurt, and then they didn't lose again. Yeah. So I don't know. You try to put your mind around this, but you really can't.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a couple-week stretch last year where people were just going out of their minds.
A loss over here just doesn't sit well. And the worst, and last year for fans, the FCS kickoff game, they lost at Montana. Then they had a bye week, so it was 13 days of sitting around with Bison fans with an 0-1 record. They just, I don't think they couldn't handle it until obviously they got back on the field and then ripped off 4 in a row.
I wanted to congratulate you because you recently got engaged, and
I did. Thank you.
Without going too much into your personal life, what can you share about that moment and the woman that you're going to be marrying?
Her name's Courtney. She's a school teacher, high school English teacher in Moorhead, Minnesota, right across the river from Fargo. I met her. I met her 7 years ago, and we dated for a couple months, and things just didn't work out. My schedule was a little different than I was working weekends, and obviously,
that's when
she's off weekends, so that didn't really work then. And we got back together about 3 years ago, and I still kind of work weekends now with how much I work with the Bison, but she's been unbelievably understanding about my schedule, and it's not easy. You know this from your days in sports television. It's not a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday kind of deal. And she's a really special person, and her mom's side of the family is from Chicago, and when I went to Chicago for the draft in April, I never got to see anything. It was just a 2-day whirlwind, just trying to cover everything with Carson. I wanted to go back, so we went back this summer, and we were right by Lake Michigan, and I asked her I just thought that was the perfect time, and I asked her to marry me, and thankfully she said yes. So it was, we're getting married now next June after football season.
That's
thankfully,
good.
she can understand how crazy the life is of a sportscaster. But yeah, she's one in a million. She's fantastic.
This summer, North Dakota State, they came out with a restrictive media policy and then very quickly rescinded it. I'm curious what your initial reaction was to it because of being a working member of the media, and how some of your peers also reacted.
It was really interesting. It was a crazy couple of days. My initial reaction, I was really disappointed because it seemed it was aimed at something that myself and Jeff Kolpak, who's the beat writer for the Forum of Fargo Moorhead, who's covered the team for 25 years, it was kind of aimed at us. There were a lot of things we were doing that nobody else in this town either had the idea to do or does. And it just felt like it was, I still can't find the right word to describe outside of restrictive, just of why were they trying to tie our hands behind our back to do our job. And it did not go over well here in town. It didn't go over well nationally. It didn't go over regionally very well. I think that had a lot to do with why they were rescinded. Thankfully, they were. And I think there's a lot of people, I think, in your neck of the woods that would say that North Dakota State gets covered differently than any other FCS team. It's covered here. The Bison are big time. The football players in this town, whether they like it or not, are public figures. If they do something wrong, it's going to be reported about in the media. Now, that hasn't happened really for the majority over these 5 years. I think that's a big reason why they've won 5 titles in a row. But there's nothing else in this area that gets 19,000 people to a game. And tailgating alone has become an event. There are hundreds of people that go to tailgating that don't go to the game. They just go to socialize, have a good time, and then we'll go either go home to watch the game or go to an establishment and watch the game. And we've kind of set, I think we've set the precedent of how to cover FCS football. I think when our media contingent goes anywhere, I think you've seen it when we've been to Carbondale or Terre Haute or Youngstown, Macomb. We travel like an army. I mean, it's not just, WDAY or the Forum. There's the entire media contingent out of Fargo. That's sometimes 8 to 10 people that are coming for a road trip. Frisco has been unbelievable. I mean, there's 20 to 25 media members that just swarm on Frisco that hopefully the press box at Toyota Stadium is going to get a little bit bigger in this renovation because it's pretty much swelled to capacity when NDSU's been down there.
It's already electric in here. You can see the offensive line is ready to rock behind me. They've got to have a big task tonight against the Richmond defense.
As far as unusual talents go, you can drive with your feet. And so, first of all, how did you discover that knack?
Well, it's funny. My grandfather taught me how to drive, so he drove a stick. So that's just from him learning that. And I thought, well, I have unusually large clown feet. I have like size 11 feet. So I just thought it was easier just to do that. So I brake with my left and I got gas with my right. I drive like a grandpa too, by the way. I do not. My fiance is not happy with how slow I drive around town.
What would you consider your worst TV blooper or live moment, and why?
Oh my God.
I mean, we all have them.
Well, this happened, I want to say, about a year and a half ago, and I don't even need to explain why. It's pretty self-explanatory. I was doing a high school baseball highlights, and a kid got a hit, went right back up the middle, and instead of saying up the gut, I said up the butt. My co-anchor, she just lost it, and I got several messages on Twitter, Facebook saying, "Did I just hear Dom Izzo really say that on the air?" And it's just that. Thankfully, it was nothing worse than that. It's not great, but I was mortified. And I'm such a perfectionist, and I'm sure you are. You've done this. That A, I hated messing up a highlight. B, I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't get fired for this. This is so terrible. Thankfully, nothing bad happened, but I was just, I was mortified.
Yeah, we've certainly all had those moments.
It was terrible.
You know, if you could cover or do play-by-play in your instance, any sporting event, anywhere, any broadcast partner, if you're going to go the play-by-play route, what would it be, where would it be, and who would it be?
Oh, that's good. I'm really getting my fingers crossed. The Super Bowl is coming to Minneapolis next year, that we're going to be able to go and cover that. That's my ultimate, I think. Next to the Olympic Games, those are the two. I think the Super Bowl might be more realistic than getting to go to the Olympics. And I've always been a Bob Costas fan. He's been my sort of broadcasting hero since he was on TV when I was a kid. So I just think he's just the consummate professional. He never, just talking about bloopers, he never makes one. He never screws up on TV. He always asks the right questions. He's never long-winded with a question. He knows exactly what he wants to get to. He's always informed about everything. That would be my ideal broadcast partner if I could somehow. He actually came to Fargo about 7 years ago because for the Roger Maris's golf tournament. Roger Maris, is from Fargo, and he's such a huge baseball nut and one of the big proponents of trying to get Maris into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And that was one of my career highlights, was be able to meet him when he came here in 2009.
That's awesome. What did you ask him?
Oh, I don't even know. I probably can remember getting words out. I just was like, it's just a pleasure to meet you. It's we did an interview actually, and a lot of it focused on Maris and his stuff to get into the Hall of Fame. And I was beyond asking about tips for my career. I didn't want to bug him with that sort of stuff. I just wanted to kind of pick his brain on other things than trying to advance my career, so to speak.
Rather than go all fanboy on him.
Right. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
You've covered 5 NDSU national championship runs. What's your favorite and why? Which one?
Oh, man. The first one was just so I wouldn't say unprecedented, because they were coming off a 9-5 season and they made it to the quarterfinals the year before. That was the infamous fumble game on the red turf at Eastern Washington. And then they started off the following year. They go 10-0. They beat Minnesota. They lose, or 9-0, excuse me. They lost to Youngstown and then went to Macomb to win the Valley Championship in the final game of the regular season. And then they just decimated teams in the playoffs, and they whooped Georgia Southern. And Georgia Southern at that point, they were the gold standard of the FCS, and the Bison came in just, I think it was 35-7. And that first trip to Texas, when the bunch of us went down there to cover it, we had no idea what to expect. And there were so many Bison fans there. We started seeing it on Thursday night. We see the green and gold. It was just, that team was a bunch of characters, and there were so many young players on that team. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I just found the story I did on championship night, and I alluded to, they're only graduating 9 players. They could be back here next year. Wasn't really going out on too much of a limb, but obviously what's happened over the last 5 years. But that first one always will be special to me, just because of the guys that made up that team, especially some of those seniors who had been through that 3-8 season to now win the national championship. That was always going to be a special place for me.
Yeah, very cool. You put out so much content, and I was curious about specifically the Bison media blog that you do. Was that an idea that you just came up with, or how did that kind of materialize?
It actually, Jeff Kolpak and the previous sports director, Steve Hallstrom, started that in 2005, and it was just a straight up blog at that point until I took over as sports director in 2010. And I just kind of saw where the medium was going, and say, what, let's incorporate the video portion with Jeff with the writing portion, because we're owned by the same company, the newspaper and the TV station. We've got a really unique situation that we can dominate this market. Yeah. And I'll never forget, we were traveling to Eastern Washington in the Denver airport, and the guy stopped us and goes, "Hey, you're the guys from the Bison video blog. I watched it every week." And he was from Alabama. He was an NDSU graduate who lives in Alabama. And I'm like, whoa, think we might be onto something. And then obviously NDSU's success has been the biggest reason why the blog has gotten to the point where it is. But I have had numerous parents tell me, you're the only way I can connect with my son, or I know what's going on because they live in Omaha or they live somewhere in the Twin Cities or Wisconsin. And obviously the local TV stations there, they're not going to cover North Dakota State. And that's been the really cool part for me, is to hear from the parents saying, thanks for doing what you're doing, because we have an idea what's going on back in Fargo.
You know, for people that are outside of North Dakota and outside of Fargo, how would you describe the Fargo market? You know, people are so, you know, I think people outside of there have gotten a glimpse, you know, when College Game Day or something of that nature has come to town, but it's hard to appreciate it unless you're there. And so give everyone kind of a window into what it's like to live there, what it's like to work there.
It's a fantastic place to live. I can't believe, like I said, I've been here 10 years. The people here are very welcoming. They're very nice. They're very hardworking. I think they appreciate people that, put their nose to the grindstone and don't whine about it and get the job done. And they love their sports. They really are appreciative. It's not just Bison football here. This is big Minnesota Vikings country. So they love the Vikings. They love the Minnesota Twins here. And they're very prideful about where they come from. I think there's that notion of the movie that's out there. I think that's been knocked down a couple pegs. Two reasons: College Game Day and Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. They've seen these two massive things that have come out of here and said, boy, there's a lot more than Fargo than just the wood chipper. And I think that's certainly opened people's eyes. The NCAA basketball tournament had a big thing to do with that too. When NDSU first made it in 2009 and nearly beat Kansas, and then 2014 when they did beat Oklahoma, I think that gave a window into what this community is really about. So that's maybe my best way to describe it in the time I've been here.
Awesome. Dom, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share or that you want to touch on?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything here. My dog has been way too quiet. He's just been sitting underneath the table here. So this is a miracle. I've never had that happen.
Christmas miracle. Except it's in September.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. Are you headed to the Iowa game yourself?
We are. Yep, we're leaving. We leave Friday. We're driving down on Friday afternoon, and I have never been in a stadium that big, so I'm really, really anxious to see what it is, especially, with the new policy the Big Ten has put out of not scheduling FCS games anymore, which I think is a travesty. We probably don't have time to get to that, but if this is the last one that NDSU is going to play, what a one to go out with an Iowa team. I'm really looking forward just to being there and seeing the spectacle.
Well, enjoy. I know I will be watching on Saturday, and I'm sure our paths will cross this season.
Sounds good. I really appreciate you asking me.